Good afternoon, and welcome back to Asgard, and welcome back to our Direwolf 20 1.10 modded Minecraft Let's Play series. So I do want to go ahead and say I apologize that this episode's late. Of course, yesterday, if you probably saw, there was a lot of stuff that came out that I was working on. I've also been working on a couple tutorials and a spotlight, and then in addition, of course, this weekend, we'll start our collaboration with FTOG, and so I was actually, the pack came out for us to test and kind of play around with and look at seeds and all that stuff. So I was doing a little bit of that, and also studying up on a couple mods within that pack that I haven't played with prior. So, but I do apologize, this episode's coming out a day late, but hopefully we'll be back on track before too long. So, but anyways, today, of course, we're going to be working on finalizing our deep resonance setup. But Matthew commented on the last video and informed me that RFTools Control actually has compatibility now with deep resonance. So I looked into it, and it does, and it's absolutely wonderful. It's going to make our lives a whole lot better, honestly. And I did make a couple changes in here. I went ahead and changed this to just pull out the liquid, because, like, the bucket, if you recall, the bucket was working, and then it stopped working after the most recent update. And anyways, the lava in this dropped, and I ended up having like some pretty bad purity, or some pretty bad quality RCL, which I ended up just turning into crystals, because I was like, I don't even want to mess with that stuff. So the bucket stopped working, so I did change that to just pull out the fluid on a redstone signal and go into the tank. And that sorted it out. I also set up export buses and import buses. So import bus is going to pull in the spent filter material, and then we're exporting filter material. We're exporting to all of these, the materials that they need. And then I also changed up a couple of the filters. I did change the purity on this one to 85.1%, so it will go all the way. I changed it to 85 on the valve. So since it does go to 85.1%, we are able to do that. Now, in addition, due to the RF controls, we may eventually end up changing this up, because like right now, of course, we can't set it to necessarily 100% and it pull out at 100%. Like, we got to set it to like 99 and then let it pull out. So down the road, not right this second, but down the road, we're going to, of course, reset up our deep resonance build, and we're going to refine it a lot whenever we go back and do that. And since RF Controls does have the deep resonance support, we may end up just doing one purifier, and we could even do one laser if we wanted to. And that way it's a lot less space that's going to take up, because like this is a lot of just crap through here. But for now, I'm just going to leave it like this, and then, like I said, once we go back and we add in nether stars and do all of that, we'll probably alter it a bit. So, assuming that we decide to do nether stars, we may just end up using gas tiers forever, and if so, we'll come back and we'll refine it a bit once we come back and do the efficiency and stuff like that. But so today we're going to do a little bit with RF tools, and then we're going to finalize deep resonance. So at the moment, the main thing that I want to set up for RF tools is I want to have the redstone on these infusing lasers set based on the quality of the liquid, or not the quality, but the the purity, the strength, the efficiency, all that stuff. So I want RF tools to actually control the redstone signal and say, okay, infuse now. And then as soon as it, the strength or the purity or whatever rises to a certain amount, then I want it to shut off the redstone signal, so we're not wasting that laser, doing something that we particularly don't want to do. But anyways, I went ahead and made the RF tools stuff that we needed. We already have a crystallizer. There is a little bit from from deep resonance I'm going to have to craft, but I didn't want to spend all episode crafting. All this stuff is really basic, by the way, just these machine frames and redstone nether quartz. There's some ender pearls, some green dye, gold nuggets, that kind of thing. It's not terribly bad at all. So anyways, we're going to just set up our programmer right here. This thing doesn't require any power, and I was actually playing around with the program. This isn't the actual one that we were going to use, but I was playing around with the program to see, and actually I'll just clear it, how I wanted to set it up and everything. Then, in addition, we're also going to use processors and nodes, which we'll get into those in a second. Well, actually, we'll go ahead and set up our processor and our node. Now, the processor can connect to nodes wirelessly if you have a network card. And this one, there's two different ranks of the network card. I think the other one is like a 35 by 35 by 35 or something like that range. But really, we only need a 17 by 17 by 17. So our processor is going to require power, and so we're going to plug it in right here and let that go ahead and fill up and everything. And I'm not going to add any of these things just yet. We'll get into all those, once we're ready to start messing with them. And then in addition, for this setup at the moment, we're going to use 5 different nodes. And I'm going to go ahead and pull the levers off these. And by the way, over here, this is just the ender pearl setup. I went ahead and I added a valve and said, once the purity is at 99 or higher, go ahead and send it down. And so we do have a nice liquid here with 100% quality, purity, strength, and a 72.2% efficiency, which is, like I said, that's suitable for us at this current juncture. But anyways, our nodes, we're going to put one of them right here, and then we're going to put, if this pipe wasn't here, realistically, I could put them like another node right here instead of 2, but I really don't want this pipe coming out in front of here, because I kind of just want all this stuff here and back, So, but you could cut down on it. I don't mind, because eventually we'll use these nodes. We'll reuse them, down the road. So I'm not too concerned with it. So we're just going to put our nodes right here on the top. And then we're going to put another node on the top of this one. And then another node on the top of this infusing laser. Also, realistically, if you wanted to, you could have your processor there instead of the node, or, on any of these instead of the node if you wanted to. I just didn't, just because because I wanted the processor kind of separate, and I didn't want signals or anything coming out of it in particular. So I decided I'd just make another node, because they are fairly cheap. Because ender pearl, we have tons of those. So, but just keep in mind that this processor is interchangeable with the nodes. The nodes are basically just processors. They don't hold any of the program or anything, but they do act the same as the processor, which we'll get into that as we get into RF controls. Now let's go through, and we're going to go ahead and name this channel, and we're going to call it, and we're going to go through and name all of these dbar. And basically what that does is that sets the channel so that the processor, when given a wireless card, can connect to any nodes on that channel dbar. So that's what that's for. And then we're going to go through and name all of these nodes so that we can find them and access them and everything once we get into the program. So we're going to call this one lays number 1 and lays number 2, and then we'll call this tank number 1, tank number 2, and tank number 3. So now all of these have a name, just so that we can find them and access them once we start setting up the program for this. So the programmer is actually where you're going to design the program that you want to use. If you've ever messed with drones from Pneumaticraft, that's honestly kind of what it reminds me of. Or Steve's Factory Manager as well. It kind of reminds me of that. So if you ever played with those, RFTools is really the same thing. It's very simple once you get used to it, but it does look really confusing whenever you first open up this GUI and you start messing with it and everything. Basically, this is just so you can filter categories. So if you only want to find things that relate to items, you can click on items. We have liquids, crafting, and so on. All of this stuff we're going to get into in a minute once we actually set up our program, and then here you can drop your opcodes to delete them. And there's a lot of different things here, and if you want to find out what anything does, you can just hold shift, and it's going to tell you, what that opcode does. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to want to go ahead and put in a repeat event. And what this is going to do is basically it's going to cycle the program that that's running. So once it reaches the end, it's going to recycle it back to the beginning and then cycle it back through. So if you click on this, you'll notice that it's kind of blinking red. That means it's not set. So if anything on your board is blinking red, that means it's not set up properly, and you need to actually put information into it, say for the ticks. You'll notice that this one says optional on the text. That means anytime you see that, you don't have to have something in there, but if it doesn't say optional, something needs to be put into that text bar. And if we were to come over here and say validate, you can actually see it's missing a parameter at 0, 0, which would be right here. And so if I move this right down here, it's now 0, 1. This would be 1, 0. And then if we moved it over here, for example, that's 7, 3. So you can see by the grid, where things are located and whatnot whenever you go to validate. So basically, validation is going to tell you if there's something wrong with your program, where it is and what it is. So right now it says it's missing parameter ticks at 0, 0. So we know that this event here has nothing in the ticks category. So for this repeat opcode, we're just going to set the amount of ticks that we want between each execution. So, how long is it going to go before it runs the program again after it reaches the end? So we're going to say 40 ticks. That's about 2 seconds. And seems to be, whenever I was testing around with it and everything, it seems to be pretty good. Now next up, we're going to add an operation for Set Redstone, because if you don't set the redstone back down to 0, what's going to happen is it's going to run the program once and it's going to say, okay, everything checks out. We're going to emit a redstone signal, but it never resets it back to 0. So I believe there's actually a reset opcode as well, but for the sake of this, set redstone is fine. It just clicks off the redstone for a second, and then if it still meets the requirements, it kicks back on the redstone. But so we're going to use this set redstone, and we're going to say that, let's say this first one that we're setting up is going to be for the dual lasers, I do believe. And we are going to say that you're going to set the you're going to want to set the node name. So this one, if we take a look here, this is lays number 1. You need to look at the node name and not the channel name. The channel name, we'll get into using that down the road. So we're going to look at the node name, and that's lays number 1. And so we're going to set this node as lays number 1. And we're going to say that the redstone signal, I think we're going to do the one this infusing laser first, and you'll notice that this is pointing to the north from the node. So we're going to say that the north side, and we're going to set the redstone signal to a 0. Because basically anytime that it comes back around, it repeats this program, I want it to reset the redstone signal to 0, so that way it's going to check and make sure that everything checks out before it turns the redstone signal back on. And then we're going to do an eval, and we're going to say get liquid in tank. Basically what that's going to do, it's not actually going to pull any liquid from the tank, but it's going to evaluate the liquid in the tank and say, basically turn the amount of liquid in the tank into a variable, is what I want it to do. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say, once again, lays number 1, and we're going to say it's on the north side. And you can also set up an optional side to access it if you want, if you need a different side to access or whatever. But we just need north side. That's fine in this case. Then we're going to get a greater than test. Because basically what this is going to do is this is going to test that liquid that we just had and say, is it greater than this value or not? And so the first variable is what's going to be like compared. So if this value in the first variable is greater than the second value, then it's going to create a true output. And if it's false, it's going to create a false output, which we'll get into true and false outputs in literally just a second. But anyways, this first variable, we are going to go to function and say last integer. So basically what's going to do is it's going to use the last opcode, which was our liquid in tank eval. And that's what it's going to test with the, or compare with what we set here. And so then next up, we're going to do a constant for the second variable, and we're going to say 6,000. And so what that's going to do is it's going to test how much liquid is in this tank. And you know what? I actually put the wrong thing there. My bad. On this get liquid, I just realized we don't want lays number 1. We want tank number 1. And it's going to be on the downside because it's below the node. I apologize about that. But yeah, I would have been testing this for liquid and it would never check out. But basically what this is going to do, since we set it at 6,000, it's going to check this tank and say, is there 6,000 millibuckets of liquid in this? And if not, it's not going to continue the operation. And the reason we're doing that is because 6,000 millibuckets is what it requires to make a single crystal. So we're not even going to bother with liquid until we have enough to actually get a crystal, and then it'll actually start running the process and doing something. And so then we're going to take a look here. Let's see, what we're working on here is prismarine crystals, strength and efficiency 4%. So what we're going to do is we are going to come down here to the very bottom. We're going to get a strength or efficiency eval. I'm just going to use strength. You can do either one, and you don't really have to do both. It's 4% to strength and efficiency per prismarine crystal and per run of this laser. So they're going to raise at the exact same rate. So there's really no reason to measure them separately because it really doesn't matter. Like they're gonna go at the same rate. So, and then what we're going to do is we're going to set the tank, and we're going to do tank number 1, and we're going to say side down. Once again, close that off. And then we're going to get another greater than, like we did before, and we're going to set the first variable as the last integer, which would be the read strength. So how much strength is within this tank. And then I've set this tank up to 30 on strength and efficiency. So this one we're going to say, is it greater than 30? Now sadly you still can't do decimals with these, so decimals just aren't appreciated in this mod, I think. So we're going to say, is it greater than 30? And because of course that's the cutoff point. So if it goes over 30, that's going to shut off the laser, is what we want to happen. So if it's greater than 30, what we're going to do is we're going to set the redstone. So what we're going to do is, if it's true, that's the green, by the way. These are all true statements. So repeat, yes. Change redstone to 0, yes. All that stuff. But when we start doing these greater thans, like basically, since there's no false option, it can only do anything other than repeat itself, if it's true. That's the only way it can proceed down this line. But over here, we're going to leave the true side empty because we don't actually want it to, after it checks for this, if that's true, we just want it to, leave the signal at 0 and not restart it. Because after that point, the laser's done working. It doesn't need to work anymore. However, if that statement is false, if the strength is not greater than 30, we want it to run the cycle again. So we're going to do it on the false line, which is a red. So it's very easy to see. And basically, if it's going to have the red on the inside, that means the one below it is where it's going to move to if that's a false statement. And so what we're going to do is we're going to set the redstone on this. And we're going to say it's going to be a signal of 15. And of course, that's lays number 1 on the north side. And so, if so, it's going to say signal level of 15. And then after 40 ticks or whatever, it's going to repeat that process. And so now this program is finished. So, happy days, that's done. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and insert ourselves a program card. And then everything's good. Let's go ahead and validate it. Everything checks out. If there's no text, that's a good thing. It's a very, very good thing. So everything checks out. And then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and just hit save. And we're going to call it prismarine laser. Or prismarine lays. Okay. So it's named prismarine lays. All good. We'll save it and grab it out of there. And then what we'll do is we'll throw it into this processor right here. And so now it has the Prismarine Lays program in there. Now it's not going to start running because we haven't given this any CPU core or network card or anything like that. Now there's 3 different CPU cores, and basically they allow the processor to run more programs per tick. And so for this, we're going to just put in just a standard CPU core. It allows 1 operation per tick and requires 4 RF per tick. Now you'll notice if we look up here, the second tier requires 14 RF per tick, and it does 4 operations per tick. And then the top tier one does 16 operations per tick and requires 50 RF per tick. So I mean, you can do, you know, other things, multiple things, even with this bottom tier. So, but if you do need to upgrade it, there is some options there. So we're going to go ahead and put in this CPU card, and you'll notice that it pops up and says missing node. That is because it can't access those nodes at the moment because it has no network card. We are going to insert this network card into here, and we can do, let me see, what's the name of this? Deep R. So what we'll do is we'll say net setup deep R. Oh, I capitalized that. I don't think I capitalized it. So we'll say net setup deep R. Yeah, there we go. Found 5 nodes, 0 crafting nodes. So now this processor is linked up with this network card and is now linked to all the nodes. So you'll notice that this program is working fine. It's doing an operation, and you'll notice that these operations are they're timed about perfectly, you know, for that like 40 tick interval. So it's enough for it to send in the prismarine crystals, and then it'll reset. So that way, whenever this reaches the desired strength and efficiency, it's not going to keep running. It's basically just going to insert, and as soon as it hits that, it's not going to do it again, so it'll just stop. So about 40 ticks is what I found from testing that seems to work really, really well. So that one is running now. It's running, and it's running well. And so what we'll do is we'll come over here, and we're going to change this this up for the next laser. And it's actually really, really easy to change this over. This one, for example, we're looking for the strength to get up to 99 minimum. So for this one, we're just going to have to change a couple values. First off, this laser is going to be on the south side. So we'll go ahead and say laser on the south. And then the liquid in the tank, we're going to use tank number 2 on the down. That's good. We're going to say greater than 6,000. That's great. Right here, the tank needs to be tank number 2. And we're going to say check and see if it's greater than 99. So as soon as it goes above 99, that's when it's going to shut off the signal. And because we're trying to get the strength up to 99 at that point. And then right here, we're just going to change this to, laser 1 on the south side. And so now this should all be good. And so we can insert our program, hit save, and we're going to call it gas laser. So we know that that's the one that corresponds to the gas laser. And so what we'll do is we'll insert this program card into here. And of course that one's not going to run right now because there's no liquid in there at all. And keep in mind that it does have to have 6,000 millibuckets in order for that to run. So it is going to stop right there. It looks like this one has run out of crystal. Okay. That's fine. And by the way, all this text here, because we have like a wall of text in this thing, for starters, you can actually do overhead logs. So if you look at the front of this, you can see the most recent things that have come up in the text log if you want to do that. You can also do a debug display, so you can see what it's doing. But we're going to leave that to off right now. That's fine. And you can also do resource allocation. If you want to put items into this, it can move items and things like that. It can do all kinds of really, really nice things, which I'm sure we'll get into down the road. Also, if you want to clear out all this text, just hit clear, and there we go. That's going to clear all that out for you. And so we just have to set up this laser now, this lens and this laser. So this is lathe number 2, and this is tank number 3. So we're just going to change this up really, really quick. We're going to say you are lathe number 2, and I believe that's on the downside, yes. So downside, and this is tank number 3 on the down, 6,000 millibuckets, that's great. Over here, we're actually testing for the purity. We want to get the purity up to 100%. So what we're going to do is we're going to just switch this out, throw it in there, delete opcode, and we're going to go down here and get a read purity opcode, and we'll go ahead and just set this to tank number 3 and side down, and then we're going to say if it's greater than 99, and then we're going to say lathe number 2 on the downside. And we'll go ahead and hit save, and we're going to say this is Ender lathe for now. That's good. And we'll go ahead and grab that and put it into here. So very, very nice. So once we have more resonant crystals moving around in this and everything, we'll see that running more often. But that's basically just how to set up the RF control so that these, you know, we're not going to be around to toggle lasers. I don't like manual stuff. So this is a way to quickly automate that. Like I said, we're going to revisit this and make it bigger and better in the fairly near future. I want to move on to something other than deep resonance, you know, for a few episodes. But then once we have nether stars and stuff like that, if we decide to do that, I may just stick with gas tiers, honestly. I don't know. I'm still kind of debating, but nether stars are really convenient. So, but they're also a little bit more expensive than gas tiers.